Okay, so imagine a family argument so intense that it gets a direct response from the heavens. No, I'm not kidding. That's pretty much what happened to a 15th century scholar named Kṛṣṇadāsa Kavirāja. His whole life, his entire destiny was completely changed by one single debate and a dream that came right after. So, what does happen when a private family fight gets, well, a divine intervention? I know, it sounds like something straight out of a myth, right? But for Kṛṣṇadāsa, this wasn't some ancient story. It was real, and it was the exact moment his life took a hard left turn. All right, so before we get to the dream and the drama, we've got to understand just how big of a deal this was. We need to look at the life he was supposed to have, a pretty quiet, totally respectable life as a scholar, following in his family's footsteps. So Kṛṣṇadāsa was born way back in 1496. He grew up in Jamatpur in a really well-regarded family of physicians. You had his father, Bhagīratha, his mother, Sunanda, and his younger brother, Shamadas. His path was pretty much laid out for him, right? Everything was pointing towards this quiet, predictable, scholarly life right there in his home village. Yeah, about that quiet, predictable life, it was about to get completely turned upside down. And it all started during a religious festival at his house when this one, let's just say, very honored and incredibly intense guest showed up. Okay, so picture this. Kṛṣṇadāsa's home is just buzzing, filled with the sounds of Sankirtana, devotional chanting. And right into the middle of all this walks Meenakatana Ramadasa. Now, this guy was famous for his totally all-consuming devotion to Lord Nityananda. He wasn't just some regular guest. He was like a spiritual force of nature. I mean, Ramadasa's devotion was so deep, so profound, that you could actually see it on him. We're talking constant tears of joy just streaming down his face. His arms and legs would either be trembling uncontrollably or just completely frozen with spiritual emotion. And get this, his skin would even break out in these ecstatic little bumps that looked like kadamba flowers. He was literally a walking, breathing embodiment of divine love. And here's where things get complicated. Kṛṣṇadāsa's brother, he had rock-solid faith in Lord Chaitanya, but he had only a tiny, tiny glimmer of faith in Lord Nityananda. And of course, Nityananda is the very person Ramadasa is so ecstatically devoted to. So you can see the problem, right? This theological disagreement was basically a ticking time bomb. So naturally, Ramadasa picks up on this lack of faith, and he's not happy about it. And Kṛṣṇadāsa, seeing this, doesn't even hesitate. He doesn't miss a beat. He steps right in and calls out his own brother, telling him, hey, you can't do that. Disrespecting one is disrespecting the other because they're basically one and the same. And this is where he delivers this amazing line that just cuts right through all the noise. He uses this brilliant, super simple analogy. He says, look, if you have faith in one but disrespect the other, your logic is like accepting half a hen. I mean, how great is that? You can't accept half a hen. It makes no sense. And in the same way, you can't just pick and choose which parts of the divine you want to believe in. He basically told his brother it's better to be an atheist than a hypocrite. Wow, what a powerful, absolute defense of his conviction. So, this moment, this act of standing up for what he believed in, of defending a devotee's honor, it didn't just fade away. It was noticed. And that very same night, the whole conflict gets resolved. But not in some family discussion. Nope. It's resolved in a dream. Because he stood up for that devotee, that very night, Lord Nityananda himself appeared to Kṛṣṇadāsa in a dream. And this wasn't, just some random pizza dream. This was a direct, divine response to everything that had happened that day. And in that dream comes the command that changes everything. Lord Nityananda speaks to him, plain as day, and says, "Oh, my dear Kṛṣṇadāsa, do not be afraid. Go to Vrindavana, for there you will attain all things." And just like that, poof, his old life was over. A new one had just been handed to him. And what does he do? He listens. With a joyful heart, he just leaves. He leaves his family, his home, everything he's ever known, and he starts the journey to Vrindavana. He's going there to start this whole new life, learning from the absolute greatest spiritual masters of the age. And listen, he didn't just go study with any random person. He sought out the Six Goswamis of Vrindavana. I'm talking about the most revered, the most brilliant spiritual minds of that entire era. He was basically diving into the deepest well of knowledge you could possibly find.
But here's the thing. Even as he became this incredible scholar himself, he stayed so humble. Think about this. Before he started writing his masterpiece, the book he's most famous for, he didn't just grab a pen and start scribbling. No, he went to his teachers and formally begged for their permission. That just shows you the level of respect he had.
So that whole journey, which, remember, started with him telling off his brother and having a crazy dream, it all led to this, a literary legacy that would go on to shape his entire spiritual tradition for hundreds of years to come.
The man became a writing machine, and a really essential one at that. His masterpiece, the Śrī Chaitanya Charitāmṛta, it's monumental. But he didn't stop there. He wrote other hugely important texts and commentaries too. You see, he wasn't just writing down what happened, he was building the entire philosophical foundation for a movement.
And really, that's the main thing to get here. These books weren't just for scholars to read in a dusty library. They became the absolute cornerstones of the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. His writing was so clear, his insights so deep, that he basically guaranteed these teachings would survive and be passed down generation after generation. And you can literally trace his influence like a family tree. His student, Śrīla Kṛṣṇadāsa carried the torch, and he passed it on, and so on, all the way down through the centuries to some of the most important spiritual masters in the entire tradition. So you see, his legacy isn't just something in a history book. It is a living, breathing thing. Which kind of brings us full circle, back to that one moment. Kṛṣṇadasa's whole life, his entire destiny, was rerouted by a single decision, to speak up during a family argument. It really makes you think, doesn't it? What seemingly small moment in your own life, what tiny decision to take a stand for something, or to follow a gut feeling, ended up defining the path you're on today?